of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is code enforcement. Stephen's going to speak to this first, or Reed's going to speak?
Yeah, no, I'll just briefly broach the subject. There's been, as you're aware, since COVID, an increased number of building permit applications, special permit applications, variance applications, et cetera, to the building department. And they're overwhelmed right now with staffing. And in addition to those administrative functions, they get over 500 complaints a year for code enforcement, and that's on the lower side. I'm recommending that we hire a part-time code enforcement officer to fill that enforcement gap. And I'd also recommend that we hire the part-time code enforcement officer on a evening and weekend basis, because that would afford flexibility for residents to make complaints and speak with the code enforcement officer. And also we'd have like off-hour capabilities, obviously nights and weekends when certain code violations occur that we heretofore wouldn't have a code enforcement presence.
Would this cover like capacities at restaurants, bars, or no? Is that a different?
That's slightly different, but we'd work, because right now, if we hire the code enforcement officer, it would be out of the town attorney's office. And we'd be partnering with the building department and the police department. So we divvy up who's going to be doing what. So occupancy would more than likely fall in the lap of Marshall, who is Reed, and he'd be doing those checks. But we can, partner up and divvy up responsibilities as needed. And we're thinking that there would be a firewall for enforcement. So anything that has an open building permit, Reed would still be in charge of issuing violations if need be. And the reasoning is he already has the ability to make inspections, because pursuant to the building permit application, you allow the building inspector to come onto your property. And it's all within the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, which is his expertise. So we have that facet of code enforcement being handled by the building department, then all others would be handled by the code enforcement officer. And then obviously that would be augmented by the police department as far as noise complaints and things like that. But we are going to sit, if the town board decides to go forward and hire a part-time code enforcement officer, I'll be meeting with the chief of police, Reed, and we'll come up with a grant scheme for complaints. I'd also like to come up with an electronic mechanism to have a cradle to grave report on the code enforcement action. So a complaint would come in, we would acknowledge that complaint, we would do our inspection and our investigation, and then at the end, let the complainant know what action, if any, was taken. And I would like everything to be compiled in an electronic database. And then we would also, once it's up and running, maybe have a monthly or a quarterly update to the town board on enforcement, to keep everything transparent and see if we have to tweak things and see if there's areas that you're hearing about that you would like to be focused on. I just want to throw that out there and see if if the town board is receptive to that. I know of some very capable candidates from other municipalities that are currently code enforcement officers that would be interested in a part-time gig.
I think the public might be wondering, well, we already boosted up the building department, which we did with Michael DeSanctis, but Michael's main role is the rental registry and overseeing that, and also doing the building inspections that you just mentioned that, the building department does. Reed has been unbelievably involved in applications and denial letters, and aside from all the normal work we do every day. Meg and I had met with Stephen and we talked about just what you just said. Maybe we can find someone that's already in the building department in one of the other towns that we might be able to tap into.
Yeah, we have a potential candidate that has 10 years code enforcement experience and a little over a year of building department experience, and he has uber experience in safety inspections. And I know the town board's contemplating amending the rental code to require safety inspections for rental permits. So that would segue in perfectly. He would be able to, help train Michael to do those inspections, and obviously he'd be available to do those as well on weekend and evening basis for, people that only come out on the weekends, and it would be more convenient for them. So I think it's really a win-win situation.
I also see it that you could consider Michael as a replacement for, I call it the professional level. Michael's a replacement for a succession of two people that we've lost, two women in that office that we've lost over time. So in terms of expanding it, it's actually at a part-time level, it's actually not a very big expansion, given the workload and the things that we're contemplating, maybe CO upon transfer, maybe definitely the rental inspections. So to say, yeah, there's going to be an expansion, but there should be. I mean, it's easy to see how it's justified. Right, Reed?
I think this is like a brainer.
Yeah.
The following reasons. Number one, the amount of code violations that are being hit with the building department is enormous. The number one thing I actually see criticism on the town board in my 8 years of being on here is a lack of enforcement. Inconsistent enforcement, but a lack of follow through. It's something we've been criticized constantly for, and it's something that we can close the gap on. The fact that I like about hiring somebody with experience is not only can they do the job, but they can teach the skills to other people within the department. The other thing is the cancellation of the $12,000+ that we spend for the contract that we had with the short-term rental people and rental registration. So we picked up that money.
But we didn't put that into the 2023 budget. We'd already taken it out.
Okay.
I'm just tossing that out there because I'm trying to.
But the other major change that we had was we're no longer based on what happened in Noyak and what has happened in other things around the country, that the self-evaluation, when we're handing out a permit to somebody, we're pretty much accepting the fact that the person is in fact 100% honest with us and has all of those safety things in place in their home, including carbon monoxide and smoke detectors and proper gates around pools and all the other things that go along with safety. We can't leave ourselves liability-wise open to a possible lawsuit. A lawsuit will pay for many, many years of enforcement. We have to actually go out and either ask the people to pay to have that service done for them, which is an option, or we do that service for them at a cost, which will help reimburse the price of what we're paying for that particular person. So to me, I couldn't be more pleased with the fact that we get a good, qualified, experienced person that can, and especially working weekends, that can work weekends as well. I think it's a no-brainer. It's a great idea.
And Jim, just the one thing you kind of touched on, but because we discussed it, is the whole crisis that happened in Noyak.
Loss of life.
Yeah.
2 people dead.
Yeah, and a gentleman that would be under consideration was the director of code enforcement for a large municipality, and again, was heavily involved in rental permit prosecutions and is well aware of all the requirements you need to make sure that property fully complies with the property maintenance code of the New York State 405 garage code and the town code. So I think if it's possible, this would be a home run for the town and as far as enforcement.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Okay, so you're gonna.
Wait,
Amber had her hand raised.
how much is this going to cost and how are we going to pay for it?
$1.98.
Has anyone marked up a budget to see what it costs for 2023? And also even looking towards 2024?
Yeah, well, because first I wanted to make sure the town board was on board with it. I can get back to you on a number, maybe the next work session.
Yeah.
So I think we were looking at an hourly rate type.
Yeah,
of
we'll
thing.
make a proposal at the next one, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking it would definitely be a part-time position under the town umbrella. It's not gonna be like a consultant type.
With no insurance cost to us and with no fringe benefits.
Yeah, no, he already has that.
Yeah, he has all the insurance, yeah, so all that, it's just salary.
Correct.
So that makes it a little bit neat and clean,
Yes.
you know.
So, we can discuss salary
Yeah.
at some point.
The only other person I read, your feelings, if you could come up and just, I think you can kind of back up the case. The job is getting very involved.
Yeah, I mean, but ever since COVID, I mean, it's been in the 7 years almost now that I've been here. The numbers have just gone through the roof, and COVID exploded that. Ever since, the first half of 2020, we were running around stopping everybody from working. And it was sort of like a dam that filled up. And then the second half, we did a tremendous number of permits. And I think, we've been double what we were a few years ago.
Yeah.
Just like 3 or 4 years ago. And that's, taken a lot of the oxygen out of the room over there. Plus, I'm now sort of doing LBR's job and Chris's job, and Brett's doing my job and everybody else's job over there. And Michael's been as the rentals have become more of an issue. Michael's doing a great job actually with the rentals, but it's a huge amount of time. And this new thing we have where, the mandate that basically we have as a result of the Sag Harbor fire, we have to really consider requiring inspections, because as we've discussed, the town's liable if we've been allowing homeowners to do their inspections. I don't think it's necessarily done deceptively, but the codes are complicated and they don't know
Sure.
where they need smoke and CO detectors and if anything happens. So anyway, that's a short way of saying that has become more and more of a time suck for us.
And
I
Images,
think it'd be very helpful to have someone.
One of the important loops in that whole process, by the way, was, and we want safe rentals. We know that there are several hundred rentals, whether they're people that are there or leaving the house, is to notify your insurance company that in fact you are renting. So, that is an important concept, because if you haven't notified your private insurance company and we haven't gone through this inspection, think of the liability. Who would cover that if you didn't inform them? So
Yeah,
if you're on site, that's one thing. But when you're off site, and you're leaving your house in the hands of people that, again, it's very advantageous to notify your insurance company, even if you have to pay a little bit more insurance for those couple of months that you rent your house out, that you're covered. God forbid there should be a problem.
I have no idea how that works, but that's.
and Amber, just to your point, financially, I think the building department fees are considerably over what we anticipated as revenues. So, it generates its own money there.
Yeah, we've definitely had a lot of permits this past year as well, so.
Yeah, and then, don't forget, we are having a hearing on the rental law next Tuesday to require those safety inspections. And another part of the code enforcement officer program would be to ensure that there aren't illegal rentals out there and try to be proactive to compel them to get a rental permit.
Right.
Make sure the rental stock.
Bring them up to code, right. Okay.
Also, I mean, it's a different clientele these days. And I would say that it used to be that complaints were often worked out unofficially. But with the new litigious residents, I think we are kind of obligated to at least keep track of what we're doing than we have been.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, you might as well stay here, because next on the agenda is the updated COs upon transfer of property.
Yeah, so basically what this is upon a sale, of a piece of property. Some municipalities require that the seller, the purchaser, within 30 days, get an updated CO. Which makes sense for the municipalities that do it because most of them are villages. The East End towns and the larger towns do not require this because they have an enormous amount of, administrative and enforcement resources that they can go about it in a different way. But villages, and particularly, let's see here. You have North Haven, West Hampton Beach, East Hampton Village, Quogue Village, Southampton Village, Sag Harbor Village. They all require an updated CO. And again, it could be, like, we could set our own time frame, but it seems like the majority upon 30 days thereafter of the
Just so the
transfer.
public understands what's the significance.
The significance is to ensure that the property fully complies with the CO and the survey, the prior CO.
Yeah.
So that there wasn't any illicit changes like a legal basement conversion or a legal garage conversion or an addition or anything like that. So the town board records would be updated at that point. And it's not an onerous thing. So what you would require is the fee, and they range from like $150 to $500 for the fee. And then you would have to supply a survey, but you would have an updated survey anyway, because when you do a real estate transaction at the time, the purchaser 9 times out of 10 gets a new survey.
So Stephen, how would you see it, the process going forward? I mean, I close on my house, then what happens?
Well, again, we got to put it out there that would be a new requirement that you just purchased the property within 30 days, you got to make application.
Okay,
No, I'm.
put it out to who? That's what I'm saying. How do,
No, we got to put it out to the public through our resources with the press and also.
Real estate agents.
And real estate agents and Facebook or whatever. But at the end of the day, we can set up a program where we get monthly, the new last deeds of record from the county. And then we'd have a list.
Okay.
Then we could send notices out to
Right.
those people. And again, it just makes sure that everything is up to date because we don't have the resources to be complaint driven or do it that way. So I think it's a good idea to contemplate.
And the way I understand it, if it's a cash sale, there's no need, usually those are the ones that fall under the.
Yeah, typically if there's a mortgage, the bank wants to make sure that everything's legal, quote unquote, at the property. So cash deals, you don't have that. It used to be the title company would scrutinize it more, but they're not. So this is a way to, again, just make sure that everything is legal at the point of the transfer.
I think the idea is to preclude situations like we've been having, say, Scott Goodson, but the ones that you're familiar with. They're wetlands.
After the fact, yeah.
So Goodson would be an example of that, who purchased the property and it went through 3 cash sales, or 2 cash sales, 3 owners with significant wetlands violations where things were done in the wetlands without permits. And nobody ever fixed it. And I suspect that Mr. Goodson is absolutely telling the truth, that he knew that there were violations, but he had no idea what would be required to correct. And I would say an even more significant one is Ullendorf, 149 Ram Island Drive.
Sure.
Where, again, they were told, oh yes, there's some violations, but I think they had no idea about the potential, that they could lose 30% of the square footage of the house they thought they were buying, 25% basement. And it was an illegal conversion, and the owners may or may not have represented as fully as they might have.
Right.
And so now they're in a pickle, and they want to make the basement legal, but it's been much more expensive, and so we're trying to preclude that. And the other thing that's interesting, just is that in addition to the fact that there are a lot more cash sales now, or self-finance sales where they do something with the property over here, to pay for this new property. So there, it doesn't get the scrutiny. The other thing that happens is, for some reason, and I'm not sure why this is, it seems like title insurance companies are not asking for walkthroughs as much. And I actually asked one of them, why would you, I was speaking to somebody from one, and she said, oh, it's not really our liability. It's the buyer's attorney's liability, you know, the buyer's attorney is the one who's gonna be liable. You know, which begs the question, what's the point of title insurance? But I don't know, you know. We're trying to fill in, I think the idea behind this thing is that it would help ascertain whether there are significant violations.
So Steve, what's the procedure to move forward with it?
Well, I have a question about the timing of it. So you're saying 30 days after the sale? Wouldn't you kind of want it before the sale closes so that the buyer knows what they're in for? Or,
Yeah, well.
I mean, that, my question is more about the timing of it.
No, I get it.
You get it?
That would make more sense. However, the other municipalities that have done it was always after the fact and 30 days after, because that's when you get the proof that.
Probably easier, but-
Transfer, because how do you know?
Right.
But this would put inherent pressure on the seller to update, if the buyer's attorney says, we want an updated CO, otherwise, because you can ask for an updated CO at any time, apply for it. So during the transaction, I'll say, we want an updated CO before we close, because the burden ultimately will be on my client within
Right.
30 days to clean this stuff up. So that's why I think it has the inertia to make it happen.
You know,
Yeah, because your way protects the buyer.
Right.
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly.
And then it would avoid some of these situations that we find ourselves in, where it's a new homeowner going, I had no idea, you
It's
know?
better if it's dealt with early. One of the things that occurred to me that
Great.
is, you know how when the last 20 years or so, when a house is sold, the seller has to either admit to, you know, whatever possible environmental issues there are, like underground oil tanks or asbestos or something. Either have to say they have to itemize them, or they have to sign something that say,
They're not
we know
there.
nothing. And in which case, I think they have to, it used to be $800 that they had to provide to the buyer as potential remediation money, which obviously is not. But so somehow that was something that had to be dealt with by the closing, which seems like a good way to, but I don't know the legal.
No, that's what I'm saying, like, it'd be hard for us to administer because we don't know what's happened, because we're the enforcement, right?
Right.
That's why the 30 days thereafter is the norm. But again, we gotta rely on the brokers and we gotta rely on the purchaser's attorney to make part of the transaction that you get an updated CO. And now it's not onerous. This is, I pulled this from Sag Harbor. It's a one-page application. And, you know, $150 fee. And again, you have the updated survey anyway. So again, it's something that you get a lot of bang for your buck.
So I just have another process question, of course. So you do this, you get your updated CVO within the 30 days and you realize, oh, I got a hot mess. So then after that, building department handles it, whatever corrections need to be made.
Correct, yes. So that would be building department, and obviously not gonna hit them with a violation if they're in good faith trying to.
Remediate.
So,
And the thing is, you gotta apply for one, I think you gotta secure one.
Okay.
so I understand you have the process covered, and the easy way to do it is after the fact. Again, how can we protect the buyers a little more, so they know to do this before the closing?
One thing I was going to recommend is that if we should go through with this, that in this room or invite all the realties, you know, everyone on Shelter Island. That doesn't cover people in Sag Harbor and Greenport and stuff, but at least you get the word out here. And it doesn't matter whether you're representing the seller or the buyer. It's good for the transaction. It's something that's going to simplify headaches for both ends. You got to sell it on the point that if I'm selling my house, I want to sell my house in good faith to somebody, and I don't want to be pestered after the fact with a whole bunch of, why didn't you tell me this, that, and the other thing, and am I responsible? It's getting a relationship between the seller and the buyer that's good for both parties, that ensures that when you move into a house, that the checklist has been checked.
Got a
So
clean
that's-
bill of health. Yeah, and I think, and it's not every transaction, but I would say the majority thereof, these are sophisticated purchases, right?
Yeah.
So, they're gonna have very good counsel, the broker involved is probably gonna be very good. So I think when and if you pass this law, the word will get out sufficiently where the buyers will be protected.
So another question. How would this apply to, let's just say, transfers within a family? So let's say, the parents either transferred into a trust or,
Good point.
a nephew or a grandchild purchases the grandparent's house. And it's like, it's a, like a gift essentially, with that kind of,
We could make an exemption for that, but again, it's a $150 application fee that makes sure that nothing's happened between that time period,
I
so.
still think it's advantageous, even with the transfer
Yeah.
within the family, to have that. If I had to pay $150 for my kids, which Margaret and I are thinking about putting their names on the deed, yeah. So I think it's advantageous for them. They know what they're getting and that everything, all the C of Os have been closed out. We're in good shape, I don't want them to be surprised, after the fact, but
Yeah,
you
so,
have to look out for family. Who would you look
Yeah,
out
right.
for, right? I mean,
So what's the next step?
so if the board's amenable, I can prepare a local law, we can set it for a public hearing, see what the public has to say.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Reed.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Conic Estuary Partnership. Jim is the chairman of the Government Committee. Jim,
yes.
that's the title. And he's ready to make a presentation to us.
Who actually presented me with that?
And Amber.
There's a couple of us on a Zoom, and the Suffolk County
There you go.
Don't you want to,
supervisors and
don't you want to talk to him first? He'll do it.
We're just waiting, Christina, okay, there we go. So obviously, this was taken from the management plan meeting that we had. I want to cover a few things first before I go into any depth. Next slide, Christina. The mission of the Peconic Estuary Partnership is to protect and restore the Peconic Estuary and its watershed. That is the overall mission of what we're about. Our vision, a successful partnership dedicated to restoring clean water, protecting and enhancing vibrant ecosystems, and communicating sound science for nature-based coastal planning for the Peconic Estuary and its watershed. I would like to point out that this body of water is pretty involved. You have the Great Peconic Bay, you have the Little Peconic Bay, you have Gardiner's Bay. You've got literally hundreds of other distinct bays, harbors, and tributaries within this body of water. It's relatively shallow, and that poses problems. It's anywhere between 14 and 90 feet deep. Shorelines, guess how much in way of shorelines? It actually takes in 450 miles of shoreline. That's pretty amazing. The watershed is nearly 180 square miles of land that drains into the estuary. And obviously, it starts at the headwaters of the Peconic River, west of Riverhead, and it flows all the way out to a line between Montauk Point and Block Island. So it covers a large area of territory there. Next slide, please. There are 4 basic goals in the CCMP. That's the Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan for the Peconic Estuary. The number one thing was strong partnerships and engagement. And we are building on those partnerships as I speak. The latest big addition in the last year and a half has been Stony Brook University and their Marine Division as part of that partnership. Resilient communities, preparing for climate change. Probably a little bit more pronounced on the South Fork than it is here in Shelter Island and on the North Fork, but obviously critical for all 3 areas. Clean water for ecosystems, for health and safe recreation. And finally, number 4, healthy ecosystems with abundant and diverse wildlife. Each one of these goals, each one of these 4 major goals, and that's what the CCMP is divided into, has action items and objectives set for each one of these things as we go through. Next slide, please. The structure of the Peconic Estuary Partnership Management Team, if you look at it, the core in the middle, number 6, is actually in the middle of it is the Peconic Estuary Partnership Office. All right, I'm going to go through that. Within that bubble, there are 3 groups. Local Government Committee, which I am chairman of. Number 4, the Technical Advisory Committee, which is all the natural resources and subcommittees. And a Citizens Advisory Committee that's in that bubble. On the outer ring surrounding everything is a Policy Committee and a Management Committee. And that's really what the configuration kind of looks like. Those 2 outer rings, Policy Committee, Management Committee, with the Peconic Estuary Office in the center directing local government, technical advisory, and citizen advisory groups. Next slide, please. This is the local government committee's roles and responsibilities. So what I'm in charge of is local government committee. It represents the municipalities, the towns, and the villages in the Peconic Estuary. By ensuring that local government participation is involved in the decision-making on the implementation, the restoration, and recovery strategies of the CCMP. That's what we do. That's our mission. The committee composition is the following. They represent elected officials in the town of Brookhaven. A lot of people didn't realize we go that far west. We have the town of Brookhaven, Riverhead, Southold, Shelter Island, East Hampton, Southampton, the villages of Southampton, North Haven, Deering Harbor, village of Sag Harbor, and the village of West Hampton Beach and Greenport, as well as the Suffolk County legislators in districts 1 and 2. That who is on my committee, of the local government committee. So all those people are represented at a committee meeting. All right, next page, please. The leadership of the committee. Obviously, I act as the chair. I have a vice chair who is selected by a majority votes of the committee members with the intent that the chair responsibility rotate amongst the local government. So I'm on a 2-year tour. I'm in my 2nd year of that. And when I finish office at the end of December, then it'll probably will go to another town and they'll rotate through all the other towns. Both the chair and the vice president are voting members. As I said, 2-year terms, subject to reappointment. The chairman of the committee presides over each meeting, which I do, calls the meeting to order, reviews the agenda, reviews the previous minutes, gets approval of those minutes, leads the meeting to ensure that progress is being made for the completion of the agenda, and facilitates decision-making by the members and agreement on the following through on action items. Local government committees' roles and responsibilities. Next one. There are a bunch of them, and if you just turn. Okay, so I'd like to just go through what our responsibilities are. Number 1, represent the collective perspectives, concerns, and opportunities of local governments. Not just Shelter Island, but all the other entities that are part of the group. So we're all part of a consensus-based decision-making policy within the PEP. Number 2, advises the management committee. Again, that's the committee above us, right, the management committee, on our priorities of local governments as it relates to the CCMP, our mission for the PEP. Number 3, with local governments to identify sources and funds and financing opportunities to support collaborative funding programs and projects which benefit multiple local governments and address goals of the Peconic Estuary. We're doing a better job at that. So we're not working independently, we're trying to work together on common issues and common problems that we all share. Number 4, advises the policy committee and the management committee on how best to engage the watershed's local governments in mission and goals in the Peconic Estuary Partnership. Number 5, works with the Citizens Advisory on the design of the messaging on the progress and challenges facing the Peconic Estuary for communication to local governments and interested public. So the Citizens Advisory Group helps us connect with the public of each one of those communities. Number 6, works with the Technical Advisory Committee to ensure that local projects and initiatives are based on available scientific understandings and technical information, which is increasing constantly. Next slide, I'm going to go right into the meeting that we had on April 19th, and cover this very quickly. Next page. You're going to see that in our budget, Stony Brook application, $680,000. This goes into paying for the executive director, the outreach director, the water quality program manager, the natural resource program manager, and the coastal resiliency and communication coordinator. That all comes up to $366,386 of that 680. The rest of it is in supplies and equipment and our website and other things. Suffolk County applications for $170,000. Mostly that money goes into water quality monitoring and IA maintenance grants and such. Next page. Here are some of the projects that we're actually looking at right now and the breakdown of those projects. So if you look on the eelgrass, actually this is. $32,000 and change. SAF strategy, training and coordination, $85,000, and so on down the line. Water quality, you can take a look at each one of those. AJBs, $110,000. Monitoring the 3 Mile Harbor, $50,000. Microplastic investigation, which is a new thing that we're involved with now with all the plastics, $195,744. USGS, which of course you went to the South Ferry, which we are now part of that system, $177,000 and change, and PEP mini grants. We're also involved in Isle wildlife monitoring for $12,000 eel pass, which is getting eels to be able to get through those dams and reproduce, and a variety of other horseshoe crab monitoring, et cetera, $36,000. It shows you the different things that this, if you add this all together, it comes up to the subtotal is $1,115,396. Down the next one. We are now in the process of hiring a regional eelgrass expert. There are reasons for that. I've tried to list them here in these 3 things. The related changes in eelgrass from 2014 have been dramatic. The upcoming 2024 aerial map to changes in the environment and the impacts on key factors of concern, hotspots, cold spots, eelgrass conservation, and restoration into the future. There's a lot going on there with eelgrass that we're trying to study much more carefully. Number 2 is develop a comprehensive monitoring and management strategy for eelgrass within the Peconics in the coming decades. That is ongoing now. That is beginning in earnest. Number 3, assemble and convene a work group and build towards a region-wide consensus on methods and outputs. Under the second goal of habitat and wildlife, we are involved in aquaculture impact study. In phase 2, we're involved in phase 1 of community ecological studies centered around oyster cages. That's in process going on right now. Phase 2, we're looking into sediment, biogeochemistry, and infernal communities that are beginning. And all of these other tasks that we have listed below. A lot of it is going on, though, in terms of wildlife conservation initiatives. CTUC is involved in this as well. Interesting enough, we're doing a lot with horseshoe crab habituation suitability. Horseshoes are an indication, the overall health of horseshoes, an indication of how clean your water is. A lot of horseshoes lay eggs, hundreds, if not thousands of eggs along the shoreline. They lay them in sandy soils. Through wave action, those eggs are spread throughout. Migratory shorebirds come in and feed on that. So it plays a vital role in the health and welfare of shorebirds as they come in. So that's just something on horseshoe crabs. Actually, just see one other thing here. I had something that I Because I outlined just a little bit differently. By the way, that Suffolk County application, that NADP, you might have, that's National Atmospheric Deposition Program. That measures nitrogen levels. You know, that's a study of nitrogen levels.
Atmospheric nitrogen?
Yes, yes. And it's divided into two things. It's divided into a thing called CAL and HAL. CAL is Central Analytical Laboratory data, and the HAL is the Mercury Analytical Laboratory. It's all part of the National Analytical Laboratory, which is called the NAL. So that, I just wanted to point that out. And by the way, if you take a look at our configuration on the executive director, our executive director is Joyce Novak. So she's the person in charge that I work with most closely. And obviously, our outreach director is Valerie Ragona. She's a great tool for me and helps me an awful lot in the job that I have to do. Sarah Martin has a PhD. She's the Water Quality Program Manager. Barry Volson, who has a PhD, is also a Natural Resources Program Manager. And the Coastal Resiliency and Community Person's a new position that's just being advertised as we speak. The HABs, by the way, the HABs priority thing, that was the Harmful Algae Bloom Action Plan. So that's something that we're working on. And that SAVE, that SAV strategy, that's the submerged aquatic vegetation that we're looking at. That's the acronym SAV. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay. Under that phased, under the alewife monitoring, those are fish, those are the diadromus fish that operate in salt and fresh water. And we literally have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fish that were not able to spawn because they couldn't get up by the dams. We now have put in a way for those fish to get around those dams and to be able to get up and spawn. And for the last several years, actually have been producing hundreds of thousands of new fish, you know, for that area, which is a blessing for the larger fish that feed on them.
Just a silly question. Do they go down the same way they go up?
They do.
Okay.
They do. It's a little easier going down than just going upstream, but they're very similar to on the west coast, on the Pacific, of a salmon.
Yeah.
You know, salmon are saltwater fish, but when they spawn, they go into freshwater bodies and they make their way up by jumping, you know, up. These made it impossible for small fish to be able to do that. But we don't have any bear that are sitting there waiting to go down, you know, as they
Probably a good thing.
to faith as they go through there. The spawning habitat for the horseshoe crabs is interesting. Horseshoe crabs deposit most of their eggs 10 to 20 centimeters in sandy beach sediments. And as I said, they are preyed upon by shorebirds, you know, and it's a main substance for those shorebirds. Okay, I'll get into next slide of climate related stuff. So climately related things, mostly this is based on education, research based on climate change. Stony Brook University plays a major role in this particular goal. A lot is still being found out about climate change, how it's impacting us, what measures we have to take in terms to mitigate climate change. But now that we have Stony Brook on board, there's a lot of good information that'll be coming out the next few years on climate-related topics. In terms of communication and outreach, that's a big thing. That IDEAS fishing, that IDEAS fishing, that's inclusion, diversity, equity, and access fishing. that, and we are, I think there are 4 fishing trips in the Riverhead area, mostly for Hispanic families they're reaching out to Hispanic families there to get them to learn to appreciate the value of the Peconics, how they work, taking them on fishing trips, making them very inclusive part of the Peconic estuary. So they felt that by getting kids and their families out for fishing trips would be a good way to do that. The next slide up. There it is, inclusion, diversity, equity, and again, Shinnecock Indian lands are being utilized here, and also recruitment of American Indian people to participate in these activities. New York State DEC identification justice areas. These are the poor areas, and they're in every one of the communities. It's difficult with us. You know, even if you go to the South Fork and you go to a place like Bridgehampton and East Hampton, you can identify areas, small little pockets. They're not large areas. Even in Sag Harbor, they have small little pocket, might be only a couple of blocks, but there are small pockets of people that are, and maybe here in our town, we need to look at that. What they're trying to do there is change the criteria on how you judge a community to be to fit this criteria. So, you know, it's pretty hard when you, on a place like Shelter Island, when you have multimillionaires that live along the nearshore area, and, you know, Big Ram, Little Ram, and, you know, and various places around the island, not everybody falls into that economic category. But when you put us all together and we try to get funding for projects, we don't qualify because the economics are too great. So we need to work on that in terms of breaking communities down. That's going to take a more detailed effort on the part of PEC to be able to get into each one of these communities and identify that. Our goal is 40% of the funds to be spent in these areas directly benefiting these individuals. Next slide. The PEP financial plan is to deliver the CCMP, which we are delivering as we speak, and will continue to deliver for decades to follow. We didn't get into this problem overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. We have a viable plan that's working. Originally developed and presented in 2020, it was adopted. By the way, the CCMP was adopted, but they started working on it back in 2013, 14, and 15. It took 5 or 6 years of community input to actually develop the comprehensive management plan, which we have today. By the way, just like with almost like with a comprehensive plan for the town, it's a dynamic document, so it changes. And there are draft plans to review and update in 2023 to see how we can update the plan to make it even better. Action item number 4, secure increased funding as part of the financial plan to ensure successful implementation. And that was where I played kind of my key role in this. Because I asked the New York State DEC to develop a tool, which they had developed, but to disseminate that tool and to teach us all how to use that tool in terms of identifying specific projects. So that you can go online to New York State DEC, you can go to their new financial plan assistance, you can punch in the what you're looking for, if it's municipal wastewater or something similar to, you know, any topic, and you can actually see what you can qualify for. Gives you a detailed analysis of each one of those. So rather than us all work independently, and not every town, by the way, had a Jen Maciano handling that, you know, like we do. Jen, when I mentioned this to her, said, Jen, I've been on it. I mean, she uses that as one of her tools. That's not the only tool she uses, but she has a variety of these tools. But when she's screening for something, whether it's a block grant or anything else like that, she has all that data right there, and she knows basically whether we can qualify or not. The next slide, please. Current program office funds, we get some money from currently from the EPA. We get about $850,000. Current House request is for $1 million annually, which is up from what we were getting. New York State currently gives us about $450,000. There is no increase this year. We stayed at $450,000. The East End towns currently contribute $700,000, and by 2024 to 2026, that will go up to $850,000. I did jot down what those 3-year payments look like for the towns. I had 4 of them anyhow. So we pay over the next 3 years, 2024, 25, and 26, just under $27,000, about $9,000 a year on average. It's $26,775. Riverhead pays $61,000 plus. Southold, I couldn't get a number on because they hadn't updated that one. East Hampton, $445,000 over the next 3 years. They average $115,000 a year. And Southampton, $931,000. You're talking about $310,000 annually into that 700,000 and what's projected to be 850,000. So our share.
So we're basically freeloaders.
It's kind of that, right, yep. The county has matching funds, but the county is in trouble financially, and that is still up in the air. Next slide, please. Grant funding, we've tried a variety of new programs to increase grants. Applications need to be strategic, aimed at specifics, and that's something that we try to strive for here in capital planning, rather than just put in for grants. You need grants to target specific projects, and that's what we try to do in the Peconic Estuary. Stony Brook Foundation, the PEP tried their best. The conversation has ended with Stony Brook Foundation to secure private funding. So obviously, there's a lot of private funding for Stony Brook to the tune of millions of dollars that go directly into specific things that Stony Brook does. We tried to get in on that. It does help us though through their Marine Division, because a lot of good things that are happening in Marine Division are coming from these private funding donations. The Funder Collaborative is what I mentioned, the New York State DEC program, and then private funding. I think the PEP is now starting to look into private funding for people. We do live in an area in the East End where there are a lot of wealthy people that value the Peconics, that want to see the Peconics return to what they were in, the state that they were in, so they're going after private funding. Next slide, very quickly, is again on climate-related work and communication and outreach, which we covered. And I believe we covered we covered the rest of these fundings as well. I think that basically was it. Does anybody have any questions on that? It's a great group of people. It's been a learning experience for me for, a lot of things that are going on there. But I think we're heading in the right direction. We have some momentum. I think the people, I think one of the things that we lacked at the Peconic Estuary Partnership was manpower and credentials. And we were running the Peconic Estuary Partnership with basically 3 people. And we've now have a staff of about 8, of which 6 of the 8 people have PhDs, including Joyce. These people are highly skilled. They're very mission oriented. They seem to work well together. And I think the dividends are gonna really start to pay off in the future. So I'm pretty excited about where they're going with their efforts. And the CCMP is a great document. If you look through it, it's a really comprehensive document that should, if followed carefully, should get the Peconics back on the road to recovery now in the next decades.
Hey, Jim, I know you're not supposed to assume, but I was always under the assumption that the PEP was like the overall group, then everybody else was involved with it. But what we've seen in the last year is, the Cornell Cooperative Extension does their own thing. The Nature Conservancy does their own thing.
Yeah.
And to a certain point, Stony Brook does their own thing. How do they coordinate?
Well, they're all represented. They're all represented in the PEP. I mean, regardless. Obviously, the guy from the Nature Conservancy on the IA systems, the Irishman there, what's his name?
Kevin McDonald.
Kevin McDonald, thank you. Kevin McDonald is probably most outspoken person on the PEP at these meetings. Kevin is a big advocate for IA systems, but he's a big advocate he was one of the key members when I first started this to break the relationship with the group in New England that was not servicing us worth a damn and got us involved with the Stony Brook. He's a valuable asset to the PEP. He really is. But they're all represented. And I'll tell you, in the local politicians, even Bridget's very, very active in this, and so is Al. Both of them are very, very active in the organization. Fred Thiel, I would say Fred is extreme of all the local politicians, has to be one of the most active people in the Peconic Estuary Partnership. They rely very heavily on Fred, as we do here, to get things through the state, and that will help PEP down the road. So it's a great group of people that are focused on doing the right thing.
Is there federal monies too? Does the congressman get?
Yes. There's federal money involved. But to do these, one of the things that we kept saying, like from 2 years ago, right after COVID, a year ago, so to speak, timing is perfect because monies are being made available now. But are they really? You talk about the billions, maybe even the trillions of dollars that are going into these kinds of cleaning up waters and septics and municipal wastewater treatment plants. Not seeing it yet.
Right.
We're there. We need to get our projects ready. We need to keep, you don't just snap your fingers and get these projects to happen. We had a need here with West Mac Water. We put in a large project. We happened to be right there at the right time with Fred. Mentioned it to him, mentioned an amount. How would $500,000 be? Hey, that would be wow.
Yeah.
And it came. So you don't know if you don't ask.
Right.
So you got to getting these contacts and this networking together is huge. Timing is everything. But and getting projects shovel ready is everything. So we have a lot of projects going, but we're not all quite shovel ready. I mean, one of the things that we're shovel ready now is getting close to is Fresh Pond. I would say that's probably the most, but Real Point has been stagnant for 5 years. Right? We haven't done a damn thing, and we just wait. But I think Nick Lota, when you had that conversation with him, and I plan on having that conversation with him in the near future, and with Jim Reed about the causeways and the Real Point itself, yeah, he's the kind of guy that can get this thing rolling for us. Those relationships are extremely important. I'd like to say that the Heights treatment plant that I've been working on with Stella for a good number of years, we go back about 4 or 5 years now. That treatment plant could be made even better. It meets the standard now, but with an upgrade there, we could even do a better job. We put Bridge Street on, we cleaned up Chase Creek and Deering Harbor. It would be wonderful. So we haven't given up on that project. We could still do the work. Obviously, COVID put us back a little bit. The municipal wastewater thing, we've suffered some hurdles in getting that done. But hey, I think this town board, and I hope and pray that we vote in new people that are geared to want to take care of the health and safety of the people who live in the center of this island. We have to do something dramatic with them. And I think Meg and her dad are doing everything they can to get IA systems in. We need to create a better environment for the people who live in the center of this town to get it done. And whatever we can do, and we should have mini goals for ourselves here. Trying to see, hey, if we get 20 new ones a year, over the course of a decade, you get 200 homes, in the center of the island here on IA systems. That would be a goal. I think that we have to create our own goals within the town of Shelter Island that are realistic and achievable. And how do we get there? Right? And prioritize them. As Amber has looked at Amber and she has talked, show me the money. Show me the money. Well, I think if we get these projects shovel ready and get everything together, we can start to then beat the bushes for the money. Obviously, taxpayers cannot take on all this responsibility. But you know, it was a big relief to the people of West Neck Water. I mean, there's not a person up there that doesn't think that, you know, now that 2 wells are starting to having problems with 2 wells, and Suffolk County is going to pick up the cost, that's not being distributed to those 70 consumers. You know, indirectly, they are with all of us because we're all taxpayers, but, you know, they're not taking that heavy burden. And that's something that partnerships is the name of this, it never was called that. It was economic estuary, something or other. And that we changed it to partnerships because partnerships are where it's at. Now,
Good.
anybody else with questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
you.
All right.
Okay, you want to stay up there?
Deer and tick?
Sure.
Thanks for gonna,
This is lot simpler.
we're gonna go right into deer and tick.
Yeah, this is a lot simpler. I want to thank Christina very, very, very much for all her hard work putting this together for me. Appreciate it. We had a meeting here last week. Fairly long meeting.
It was a long meeting. You guys were here a
Hour and
lot.
half.
Yeah.
You know, but it was, we haven't been meeting all the time because of hunting season, because Bo is preoccupied. But here's numbers that I think that you want to pay attention to. Good news and bad news here, folks. Well, you're all seated. This year, between October 1st and March 31st, which is during our recreational 3 months and then our deer damage permit season of 2 months, we took 316 deer. That was compared to last year, 324 deer. So we're down 8 deer. Now that's roughly the numbers. 88 deer were taken between February 1st and March 31st compared to 110 last year. So obviously we did a better job in recreation and we did less of a job in the deer damage permit season because we were down 22 deer during that time frame. We awarded $2,050 awarded in 12 raffles. $900 went during the DDP period of February and March. No entries in the grand prize drawing. Drawings were held every 2 weeks throughout the hunting season. That's it on hunting and culling, just on numbers. NUCOs, nuisance wildlife control operators here. We had 2 this year. We actually had 3, but 1 never showed up. We have had a maximum of 4. So when you take a maximum of 4 and cut it in 2, you're cutting the NUCOs in half. That's a problem, especially when one NUCO didn't even show up at all. The goal every year during February and March is to take 100 doe. We try to target doe because for every 1 doe you take, you're reducing it. It used to be by 1.75 fawns. Now it's 1.60 because that number has come down slightly. Not as many quite as multiple births. And they figured, I don't know how they figured that out, but they did. The actual number of deer that we took from 17 different properties this year was 57, so we were far short of our 100. We took 83 last year from 18 different properties. We did pretty well with the resources we had. That's a quote directly from Bo. The resources need to increase. We need to, folks, say NUCOs, we've got to get more people interested in the NUCO program, get them certified, and get them out hunting during February and March. We've got to reach that goal of 100. That's a key element. And that's one of the reasons why our deer herd population is slightly going up. Cold storage. Cold storage, 140 deer stored this past season, 158 last year. 37 deer were used for personal use, 36 last year. So the numbers are fairly consistent. 2,200 pounds of meat this year donated, 4,800 pounds last year. We're down 600 pounds. Less deer, smaller deer. Why smaller deer? Less acorn pop, were available, so deer weren't as heavy. Here's the news that I wanted you to see. Flyover. We did the flyover on January 31st, 2023. Overall conditions were good except for the last hour in the early morning hours. Population estimate, folks, is now 740. With the corrected, if you might remember, we did this the end of January. So we took 88 deer in February and March, right, during the DDP. So if you minus that down, it's 752 less any deer that were killed in accidents. Again, this is all just estimates, but about 752 deer. That's a net increase of 150 deer from 2022 in very rough numbers. The number has gone up. So one of the things I said, and I'm very careful with this, I think Amber was there when I might have said it, is we rely very heavily on recreational hunters to get the job done. And we need them. Can't do this without them. There's a lot of perceptions out there from that community like, yeah, Jim, you get a bow. I'm out there, I'm not seeing nearly as many deer. I'm not getting as many deer, you know? There's problems here. So take a look at my additional notes. We are experiencing an overall decrease in the number of recreational hunters due to a wide variety of reasons. In the last 7 years, Bo has recruited 79 new hunters, with less than 19 of those people, that's roughly, say it's 20 of 80, that's 25%, right? Of those people taking 5 or more deer each. So most of those hunters are not getting deer, or they're getting 1 deer. But not like the old days when you had less hunters and everybody went out and got 10, 15, 20 deer during the course of a season. Some hunter comments, there are less deer to be taken. Time element is becoming a factor when you're out hunting. We have taken too many deer. I mean, that's their perspective. So you can't just blow them off and say, you know, your thoughts don't count. This is their perception, and when they're out there. So that is an issue. There are also the problem of younger hunters working two or three jobs. They don't have the time to hunt. They're trying to work extra jobs to actually make money as opposed to do some recreational hunting. Older hunters, that speaks for itself. And we're not nearly recruiting enough hunters to replace the ones that are going out. As we said, the deer are smaller, the flyover, by the way, the committee, you'll be happy to know, does not recommend a flyover of 2024. So they're $26,000 we will not put in the budget for the flyover. Doesn't mean that I want to take that money out of the budget. I want to redirect it in the following ways. Corn production, as I said, 1.75 to 160. Still access to properties. Bo seeks every year with some degree of success and some degree of failure in terms of getting out to those properties. Deer are smart enough, they move to safer areas. Where are they moving? We see it on the flyover, center of town.
I was saying my front yard.
In residential areas, they know they can't be hunted there. Can you hunt there? Yeah, you can, but you need the okay in writing of people, your neighbors, to be able to do that. So in Silver Beach, you can't hunt in the bird sanctuary. You can't hunt in Westmoreland anymore. Well, Westmoreland, I was in there this morning at 6 o'clock this morning, and I saw a bunch of deer run by me, bright and early in the morning. But you can't hunt in there. So we got to continue to work on opening up those critical areas. We know where the deer hang out. That's the great thing about the flyover. Not only you're getting a fairly good estimate, you're also finding out where they congregate and where you need to work on to get into those areas of refuge, as they call them. Seek neighborhood cooperation, and Mishomic, a good note was from Mike Glaspia and Mike Scheibel, were taking the tour of the entire property about a month ago, and they were amazed at the marked improvement of the forest restoration. Why? Because Mishomic is the one place on the island where hunting goes on continually, and they can get the best results. They don't have the problems that we have here in the rest of the island. They have the approval of the TNC, so they go out and they literally hunt all the time. And as a result, you used to go by all the fenced-in areas of Mishomic, look at the understory. I mean, beautiful. Right outside the fence, true to the ground. Now, because of less deer population, you're starting to see the whole place come back. When natural plants come back, invasives get wiped out. So, invasives took over because the deer were cutting down the healthy trees, and invasives took over those areas. So,
Hey, Jim, can you just go back to the previous slide?
yes, yeah. Yeah.
Christina? Thank you. So does this mean there's like a 20% increase in deer from last year?
It means that there's a significant increase. And what my challenge was, I don't know if Amber was still present when I said this, listen, get a subcommittee together. We need to talk about thinking outside the box. That's my challenge to you. Long time between now and October 1st. I expect us to spend some time as a committee to sit down and start to think outside the box. What could we possibly do? The board has to know. I don't want to wait till September to do this and to start to discuss this. We need a deer management program that is now flexible enough that we can retake some of our efforts. If we're not going to do the flyover, some of that money, by the way, has to go into tick management. You know, we are a deer and tick committee. So putting the money into ticks, education, outreach, we've got to do a much, much better job of discouraging people spraying their properties and learning how to live with, you're not going to eliminate ticks. Ticks are going to be around for the long haul. Even if you were successfully to bring the deer herd down to the 50% to 40% of the original 1,400, get it down by the end of July to a number of 700 or less, you still would have ticks. You still have other critters that carry ticks. So we've got to better educate people, and we're working on that end. But also, we need a better strategy of the NUCOs. We need a strategy for access. We need something. We are looking at the old discussions on other means of controlling deer populations. I don't want to bore you, but we did talk about sterilizations and other things that do help. They're expensive. They do have a certain mortality rate with doe. They're done out in the field. I just don't think you get a tremendous bang for your buck, literally, for something along those lines. But so there's a need to maintain the volunteer recreational hunters is important. I think that next slide, that's very essential. You've got to keep those people going. We need to regain access to properties. That's a top priority. The educational outreach is becoming more important than ever. Why? Warmer winters, so more ticks. No four posters, more ticks. DC's not going to change those regulations, even though we try, and Bo follows through on that. Difficulty in burning, so we don't burn a heck of a lot. Building out of properties and new homes, so we're providing more safe havens for deer. And more difficult to hunt because they're around private homes. And less areas where we can hunt on large parcels where they used to be. So if you combine all of those things with aging hunters, economic pressures of living here on the island, forcing to people multiple jobs, time out hunting, you've got this situation where we need to come together. We need to get update a plan for deer management. The final thing on the last page is Julia is doing a superb job. We talked about sending people west. You remember we talked about sending people to Staten Island, young people to learn how to hunt and bow and arrow hunt. We now have an agreement between the town and the Shelter Island Country Club to conduct classes of basic archery instruction on their driving range. So we can go up to the driving range, put out our targets. We have the targets purchased. We have them stored. Looking at grade school, we start with ages grades 4 to 6 as a recreational activity, work to middle school, high school kids and adults. And we have qualified instructors. Julia is becoming a qualified instructor. And we're going to try to push this basic archery, develop more people that want to get involved in this for the next generation of recreational hunters. There will also be a tick educational program set up with the Shelter Island schools, actually in classrooms, that they'll go in and educate the kids. We did some other stuff on Moses Gersier. He's an entomologist from Suffolk County Vector Control on the efficiency from a natural to, and this came up last night, CAC versus conventional pesticides. Educating people about natural products that are not foreign or dangerous to the environment versus buying chemicals to spray as pesticides on critters. So Dr. Bevilacqua is continuing this effort. We're going to spend more time on this. I would like to see people get away from chemical sprays for ticks and move into more natural, more efficient ways of controlling tick populations on your own property. Follow-up with Zoom meetings has not changed. Jim has worked with Stephen, and that's not changing. Liaison input, I talked about the flyovers and my concerns about new ideas. And new businesses, additional discussions are aimed at tick-borne illness research. We do feel, and this is where Scott comes into play, probably with it by 2024, we're looking at something aimed at Lyme disease where you will be able to get vaccinated for Lyme disease. That will be one of the major tick-borne illnesses that we can hopefully deal with. We do have the cooperation of our town physician that is also very, very helpful at these meetings. I can't think of 5 better people to work with in the Deer and Tick Committee. They're outstanding people. They do a great job. And obviously having Bo as the kingpin there with the 5 of them, it's a committee that's, it really does a lot of very good things. They're very innovative in their thinking. They're very proactive. But I knew that the numbers were going to set you all back a little bit because we had a goal, we didn't reach the goal. We are goal-oriented, trying to do that. But again, as Jim Bevilacqua said, Jim Colligan, you might have to sit back and these might be the new norms. We don't want to go back to 1,400, 1,500 deer on the island. But we're going to have to work our faces off just to keep it at 750, 850. After the fawns are born, if you have another 150 deer on top of the 850, back up to 1,000. You do nothing for a year, you're back to 1,400 within a short period of time. All that work that was done goes down the drain. So we do have to continue to work on deer management, and that is gaining access to properties, both large and small, to take care of the deer herd here. We have no intention of wiping out white-tailed deer here on Shelter Island, not even close. I want to remind everybody that the DEC recommends 8 to 12 per square mile, and we were at one time closing in on 120, 10 times what the New York State recommended. 10 times. If we cut the deer herd in half, we're still 5 times above that. So it's, there's still plenty of deer out there. And, we'll get more data. I'm sure Bo will come back in when he's back. He's working on several other things. But he will, you'll take a look from Jim on deer accidents and things like that, other things. But without the 4-poster, a lot of our camera work also went by the wayside. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that was the deer meeting.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Very much.
Okay.
Jim, has the Deer and Tick Committee worked with White Buffalo at all?
They probed about, say well before the pandemic. And they looked at the experience from, I think it was Southwold that actually hired them.
Yeah.
And they had tremendous resistance. You remember the population came out and skipped the deer away from them. There was actual public participation, which didn't want to see hired guns come onto their properties and hunt. And it's something that we tried to steer away from because I don't think people were ready for that. We've been blessed here because we had such a loyal, when we had that preseason meeting in here, we'd have 18 guys and girls in here for a meeting. We don't get that anymore. Those people are waiting, are losing out. Even the young hunters that we get here are now working a second and third job. Because recreational hunting is putting some food on the table, but it's not making, $25 or $30 an hour, for their families.
Because, I don't know, it might be time to revisit it. I mean,
It might be.
the known is the single most effective method is deer herd reduction
Yeah,
for tick-borne
Correct.
diseases.
No doubt.
Because once we get the Lyme's vaccine, then, we're gonna want to get sick from something else. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
and it is, I know that there are other vectors. I know the white-footed mouse, and I get it, the rabbits, there are other vectors, but no, it's been proven time and time again, it's really the deer that are responsible for humans getting tick-borne diseases.
It's only going to get worse because of the climate change. Climate change is the number one thing that you had going for you in growing up with 2 cold winters back to back, where the frost line went down, killed millions and millions of ticks. That you don't get that anymore.
So when you say, we're approaching 1,000 again,
Yeah.
population, I'm like horrified. You know, I mean, 500, I don't know what the goal is, but I mean, it's got to be half at least, to get a handle on, you know, and this is the grandmother, neurotic grandmother speaking. Now, again, the grandkids cannot touch foot on my grass. They just can't. Not because I spray, but because there's ticks there, so I know there are. We have quite a deer population that comes right through the yard.
I mean, actually, with the ones, with our two little ones that come out, they take a bath every night. They shower. Mom goes up, or dad, and does a full body check. They are allowed to run all over the place.
Yeah.
But have we picked a tick or two off? We have. Again, we talked in last night about the CAC, about how short you cut the lawn. If you want your property and cut it short, let it burn out, the deer ticks in it, they don't like that. They want leaf litter, cool, under the leaf, cool, moist areas. Lone Stars a little, now that are more active, are a little bit, they go in any place, you know?
Yeah.
You pick one up in a parking lot. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done by CAC, Green Options, Deer and Tick. But that's why I said we need a subcommittee to revisit this.
Yeah.
Because I was forecasting the fact that what kind of reaction I was gonna get from the town board. It's not, we surely understand they're doing the best they can. But is the best, can we go in another direction that can keep those numbers down at an appropriate level?
Yeah.
You know, we 2 years ago, if I go back, and I told you, I was that we were gonna get to 50% and drop 10%, our goal was to get to 40%,
I remember.
you know, and that's, no,
And
in the opposite direction.
We're not going to do the flyover. I get the education and outreach. I do think that's an important component, but $24,000 will buy a lot of white buffalo intervention.
Yeah. Well, I'm even talking about, I'm trying to get.
For 1 year, and then the next year you have to do the flyover, because you have to have the data.
Try to talk about the incentives in terms of what we're handing out, $250 first prize, you know, for 2 weeks of work, you know, out in the field trying to get 10, 12 deer, you know, maybe that has to be raised.
Yeah.
I know that's still illegal to put a bounty on a deer. The best thing would be is, you know, go out and pay them, you know, for every doe you take, we'll pay you $150. For every buck you take, we'll pay you $100.
Right.
And for every fawn, you'll take $50, you know, that's something along those lines, you know. But until New York State recognizes, and that's stuff we have to work on. Because, I mean, by and large, the state operates with the Adirondacks, Catskills, Western New York, and the midsection, Central New York. They don't have these problems. They have hunting areas where deer are not an issue up there. And the winters get cold enough that ticks are not quite the issue that they are down here. The toughest spot to be is in eastern Long Island. You know, and now they're actually starting to feel it further and further west as the deer make their way west. You know, we have deer in Carr Place, Nassau County. You know, how did they get there? Well, they got there through the North Fork. They just went through and got to Old Westbury, made a left-hand turn and came down into Carr Place.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a new migratory pattern.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm gonna work on,
Right.
believe me, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm gonna try
Yeah.
to close the gap there without, again, have to know how hard to push and be appreciative of what we've got, but we still have to work on results, because you don't wanna go back to square one. That's,
No.
not without the four-poster.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Go around the table, board member reports, Meg?
Hold on, I have to find mine, so skip to someone else.
Jim, you got any other positions?
But we go the other way.
Okay.
Just yesterday was CPF meeting. I think that was it. Yeah, it was away. So, yeah.
Yeah, WQI on Thursday.
Yeah.
And Tails Island today?
Oh, and Taylor's on today. That's, you know, they're just a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
We don't even need to talk about them, but they do want to put in an outdoor shower, you know, because they have overnight guests and whatnot. And so I talked to Brian about that and, you know, what plumber, and Brian would prefer it if his guys did it, which I think is great. He's like, we understand that, Captain.
Yeah.
So that's one of the projects. And, you know, there's just always, they're just very good at maintaining that asset for us and visitors to the island. It's really a great committee. There is, they are doing a thank you barbecue actually for the highway department on the 20th, I think, down. And there is going to be a fundraiser again. You know, they used to do the lobster bake, but I think it got to be pandemic, but then it got to be also too much. It was you know, just a huge endeavor. So anyway, so they do this one now at White Oak Farm. And The thank you party barbecue is on May 20th at noon. And then the White Oak Farm is Friday, August 18th, I think it is. Let me just make sure I've got the right date. Yeah, Friday, August 18th, fundraiser from 5 to 8. That's tentative, but hopefully that'll be firmed up soon. And then, yeah, CPF was yesterday. Most of that meeting was taken up with West Neck Preserve and the plans for that. It should be a crown jewel when they're done. I mean, it should be beautiful. Meadows and bluebirds and woodlands, not even wooded area, woodlands, and a demonstration garden. I know, there should be gnomes running. Anyway, so that'll be really special, but it's not simple and it will not be cheap, but you're sort of over those two hurdles. Also that there's work going on at White Preserve, at the White property, yeah, road work and drainage and all of that. And again, in June, I think June 12th, there'll be a dedication of the Nick Moorhead bench that was made by the school shop class.
Yeah.
Where's it being placed?
Where is it being placed? No, I'm totally drawing a blank on that.
Dickerson Creek.
Dickerson Creek, right, okay. Nick Moorhead bench, all that Gordon said was the afternoon. He was asked again, and he just said the afternoon. So I'm thinking maybe 2-ish. And that actually is also the next CPF meeting. So tune in. June 12th, we'll have a firmer time, I suppose, of the bench dedication.
That's the day, June 12th.
June 12th. And there's no, there was no executive meeting yesterday. Which I hope doesn't mean that we're not buying any properties, but just maybe there's nothing new to report or to talk about.
Amber?
WQI met on Thursday, and the septic rebate application update that Greg Toner and Betty Bishop have been taking the lead on is moving along nicely. So they're going to clean that up, and it will come to us for review and I guess a resolution to adopt it in place of our current procedures. But things are getting streamlined with flowcharts and better layout so that people applying for grants through the town, it's much easier to navigate. So that's a good thing. There is an application that's coming before them that for once has just questions and controversy, but just understanding someone was required because they were doing a minor subdivision, I believe. They have to install an IA in order to complete their subdivision. So the question is it voluntary? Is it not voluntary? So they're going to weigh that and look at it a little bit more to understand like which, was it the chicken or was it the egg?
Are they building a house?
No.
There's already houses on the parcels. This was one of those properties that was merged by operation of law, and they're just actually trying to go back to predating that. It's complicated, and
Yes.
with the ADUs, we're going to have to, I don't even know, maybe this is the thing, this is the issue that gets Fred Thiel to reconstitute the Supra board, the meta board, whatever we would call it, of all the CPF's, chairs and maybe supervisor getting together to chat about this. We didn't want to encourage growth. That was huge with WQI funds. But now we have this ADU thing coming on. No, we're not just us. And
there's always the question, because I've historically taken a hard line that any new building is growth and therefore ineligible. But others would say that if by right you can do something on a property, you're
Right.
not encouraging growth.
Yeah, that's why I always felt that, growth is, if you're trying to
Do a sub-
downzone or something.
Yeah, do a subdivision
Yeah.
or something like that. So we really do need to get that answered, because there's some thoughts out there. And if we're trying to, ADUs and housing, then we need to maybe help fund it a little bit if, And it could be our hook for getting people to
Right.
commit to in perpetuity.
Right.
Low.
Yes.
You know, low rentals as
Yep.
opposed
To,
to market.
you know, build a system for the entire
right.
property, you know, which is, again, we all benefit
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
And yesterday, actually, at CPF, Gordon, I don't know how to, I really, he brought up the idea again that WQI funds should not be allowed to be carried forward, or the possibility, or the discussion, I'm not really sure what his take on it was, unless they were specifically earmarked, like we have, you know, 32 IA applications approved, and so therefore we're going to carry forward to next year, 32 times $6,000, and that's it. We, you know, like, but we, I think we're fairly correct about what we're thinking, but again, he brought up that board again, that the board that should reconvene, because in other towns, there apparently appears to be, I won't say a groundswell, but some sort of opinion base that no, it should, if you're not using it, it should be CPF.
I think that's how the legislation reads. But the previous town board was very specific in going to Fred Thiel and finding out how can we allocate those funds. I mean, it's quite honestly, I don't understand Gordon's argument. It's common sense. The CPF money builds up for land. We should do the same thing for water quality.
Right,
Let
right,
that build up.
right.
Also, if there's a big need for purchasing land, we can always pull the money from WQI
Right.
pocket and put it back into CPF. But if we find a great need for WQI projects, we can't pull it.
We could max 20% per year, that's it. You can't reach back.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
I think BJ, in the future, you're gonna see a groundswell for changing the CPF criteria and more go for drinking water.
Right,
Because, you know, the other towns are acknowledging that, you know, we've preserved a tremendous amount of land. You know, the next step in community preservation is the water.
well, I would argue drinking water and surface waters. I mean, again, who wants to rely on dead body water? You know, we just don't.
Yeah.
It's pretty sick right now, but.
That was it.
Yep.
Yeah, met with the Health and Wellness Group Friday, and we have a men's group that's going into Mashomack for a special program in Mashomack. We're also running a field trip to the Navy SEAL Museum in Nassau County on August 25th at 7 p.m. We're having Dr. Cordaris. He's the specialist that he's got a PhD. He's world renowned for the use of technology on children and the physiological changes in brain tissue and of immature brains, and what we're doing with kids with enormous amounts of time that are spent on video gaming and a variety of other things, how detrimental. So what we've done is our library has taken the lead. We've got Hampton Bays Library, Port Jeff, North Shore, and Nassau County, and we just added a Quogue, and we added another one. We hope to get a dozen or more. They're going to donate $100 for the honorarium, so every library that they're going to be part of this thing and run it in their libraries. We're going to try to get that word out as much as possible. I'm reaching out to a former principal of Carl Place, Neil Conley, to get a hold of the Principals Association, to get the word out to principals of particular elementary and middle school children, as well as high school kids. So we hope to get that done.
It'll be like an online thing?
It'll be an online thing. We're going to record it. It's going to be recorded. It's going to be held here right in our library. It's August 25th, 7 p.m. I've heard him speak on the Dr. Phil show. Guy is unbelievable. And if you have grandchildren or children and they're in that age group, it's a great toy when you're taking a long ride in a car that they sit in the back seat and play that game for 8-10 hours. You know, if you're going upstate New York or something, you know, but there is a price to be paid. And it's a heavy price, and it's a bit scary, I will tell you, for an adult to watch. The guy is amazing. And it's not just shooting from the hip. It's scientific evidence that shows you the physiological changes and how that plays out in youth. It's not good. Happy to tell you the bereavement group that we ran in the last 2 summers, that Nancy Green and Bonnie ran in the last 2 summers. We've had 6 and 6 in each one of those. We have a session in June, July, then July, August. We already got 12 people signed up for the bereavement group for this summer. So that is expanding very rapidly.
How do you
That's actually not good news.
We advertise that through the Senior Center. Lori is the one that recruits the people by word of mouth. She hears of people that are, the number one thing was hearing from the seniors, loneliness. It's not necessarily, it used to be kind of more depression. People talk about being lonely and just isolated. And that's something that they're very concerned about. So, you know, a lot of this after the death of a spouse, you've been married 30, 40, 50, 60 years plus. Sometimes, you know, you lose your spouse. It is the major triggering event in your life. So we're working on doing more of that. I think the new social worker that's down there, I think there's a lot of good things that are starting to come about. There's more interplay between that and the recreation department with Bethany. And with Mashamick and places like that. So I think they're really kind of reaching out, trying to get new activities for people to do. We also are involved in reaching out to the Latino community. They have a grant in East Hampton. It's a community grant for Hispanic programs. It's an outreach program. Steve, who's a member of he was a social worker at the East Meadow School District for many years. He now lives out here on Shelter Island part-time. He plays soccer with those families and actually has a nice inroad. There's a lot of felt rejection and not fitting like they feel they fit into the Shelter Island community. We're trying to bridge that gap through the health and wellness. So, I mean, they do a lot of good stuff and a lot of very positive things. So I just wanted to report
Jim,
on.
you mentioned something about a program at the Nature Conservancy.
Yes.
Who goes, who goes to it? How do they get to know about it?
I'd have to check on that one. I'll check on it for next week. I'll check on, see what kind of programs they have there, but I think she's opened up. She wants to see more of that. Remember, Mashamick, in the last 3 years, has opened it up to the veterans. So they have a special program there that they're taking the veterans into the Mountain House and actually running a weekend program there with Jimbo Thyner, those group of people that ran it, and it worked out extremely, extremely well. So those things are happening. Last night, the CAC met. We looked at 2 applications, Loftus Hills and TAM at 169 Ram Island Drive. That one was denied by a vote of 6-0. They want everything out of the 100-foot mean high water area. As it turns out, Matt Sherman has to do some further work on the application. So he said, could you hold off on that? But as the application stood last night, they could not approve the
What's the
application as is. What's that?
What's the address?
169 Ram Island Road, Loftus /Hill and TAM. And so Matt has been informed that the CAC would like, it's a large parcel of property. Everything can be taken out of the 100-foot area that they feel. Yeah, the second one they denied was the Cheekwood Avenue LLC at 7 Cheekwood Avenue by a vote of 6-0. It's in the near shore area, has to do with some type of cottage, a new building that they were looking to expand upon. But they had some problems with, it's in a flood zone, problems with test wells, problem with an irrigation system, existing irrigation system, which is not properly permitted. And so they threw that one back as well. We did spend most of our time talking about invasive plants. We have an article that's about to be published, Love Your Lawn Without Pesticides. That was put together by a couple of our members here on the CAC. A lot of work on that. They're going to condense it down. It's a 4 or 5 page article that will be condensed down to something that we can put into print. Dan Clark worked on the invasive plant list. This is a brand new list of invasive plants that we'll be working on. We took a look at, I guess that was it. That was kind of it. The last thing I had was I know it wasn't here for it, and I'm sorry it wasn't, in the wetlands applications. I know the vote went 3-1, and 3-4, 1 against, and of the 4 people that were in attendance. But before I left, I tried to put something in writing saying, and I didn't expect it to be put in the resolution as such, but I do think it's a recommended idea that after an appropriate period of time, whatever you judge that to be, since Amber and Meg are on the planning board, when you feel that, whether it's 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, between now and November, we have 6 months, one of 3 things are going to happen. And I'm pretty convinced that we're probably in good stead that this is going to work. It's going to be a positive. It's going to work. But I think the public, since they had so much concern, should know that in fact it's working, how it's working, why it's working well. Or, God forbid, it's not working at all, and we're in disaster, we have to go back and rethink it. Or something in between where it needs a tweak. But I do think, somewhere along the line, with something of this magnitude that drew that much attention to this particular topic, that it deserves some type of evaluation process. Again, not my judgment, I'm not there. I strictly hand it back to you guys. I think Christina did a marvelous job addressing each and every concern as the 3 of you, when you went over that, the 4 of you actually, went through that. And it changed my point of view. I was very skeptical when this first came out. I became more convinced as we went on, and I read through the rationale of why we're doing what we're doing. I tried to explain it to the CAC last night, that I think that we had people that were better situated to be able to make these kinds of judgments. However, I do think we owe the public and ourselves some type of evaluation, and I don't want to belabor that, in due time on what we've done, good, bad, or indifferent. Thank you.
Meg?
So yeah, I have 2 things. One is outdoor assembly applications. We have about 6 of them pending. A lot of them are things we've seen before. They happen every year. So Amber's going to schedule a couple people to come in and speak at next week's, or try to schedule them to come in for next week's work session to go over their applications. We have 2 from the Historical Society. One is their 1970s dance party, and one is the musical. Sylvester Manor has a pending application for their farm to table. The 10K. The Arts and Craft Fair, Janelyn is looking at venues. I'm not sure if the school is going to be available. If they move forward with construction, we'll see. So we're waiting for her to clarify her location. And then the other one is Tom Haashagen put in an application to do music on the beach. And it would be 3 Wednesdays in the summer, so 1 in June, 1 in July, and 1 in August. And that's sort of in conjunction with the rec department. So we're going to see if we can have Tom and the Historical Society come in to kind of present their ideas. And most of these, so the Historical Society is for noise exemption, as is Sylvester Manor, and
Recreation.
the Recreation Department one is for, using the beach. And the craft fair kind of happens every year, but requires town services. So we'll go into those more next week, but just so you know, that's what's on the plate, and hopefully we can maybe.
Responded, he'll be.
Oh, perfect. So Tom will be here on Tuesday. But, we have the 10K coming up in June, and the
Fireworks, we're waiting.
fireworks, we're waiting on an application for the fireworks.
So I'm thinking that if the front lawn of the school is not being used for the Arts and Crafts Fair, it'll be either a Fisk Field or somewhere back near the tennis court behind the school someplace in those areas. You won't be opposite the Green Options Fair. My advice, to get to Tim Pertel, who's got Green Options, anybody?
I do.
Okay, to try to convince him to go a little earlier. That in late August, when it gets hot in the afternoon, nobody comes. So rather than start at 10, 11. and go
Start at
to
like 8.
Start at 8:30, 9 o'clock,
Yeah.
and make it a morning thing. I will tell you, the Arts and Crafts Fair, the same. If you don't sell anything by 12 o'clock, you're done,
Yeah, it gets hot.
especially on a hot day.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a change, if you luck out with the weather and you get a cloudy day where it's in the mid-70s, high 70s, that's one thing. But if you want that thing to be successful, and it's going to be separate now and distinct, yeah, I think starting it earlier would be a big, big, big help.
Okay, and then the other thing I had, so that was the outdoor assemblies, we'll go over those and approve those. Is I got like the most random email, and it shows up as Shelter Island Public Library, but it's not being sent from our public library. So if you get an email from the public library and they're telling you that you have an overdue notice for a book return, do not click the link and pay it, because our library doesn't charge you for late books. They're no fee library.
There you go.
So if you get this email, please do not pay the late fee. For me,
See how much it was?
$97.
Oh, damn.
This email says that I have
Yeah.
a book, The Da Vinci Code, overdue by 28 days, and that the fee is $97. And to pay it, click the link below.
Can I buy the book?
For much less than $97. And it looks legit because it says it's from public library at compliance-gov.com, but it is not legit. So please do not pay any library fees via email. Because I did. I walked right over and I was like, guys, I got a weird one. And so they're looking at it. But if you get an email from the library saying you have late book fees due, you do not. Don't pay them through the link. Don't address it. Don't click the link. Just delete the email. It's not legit.
Yeah, wow, thank you.
So that's just on behalf of our public library. Please don't pay those fees. 'Cause it's-
PSA.
Yes.
Stephen, what do you have?
Just one thing, on May 3rd, the Suffolk County Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of our moratorium for 6 months. And that's in line with the staff report that was issued on May 3rd. That if you go down to the staff recommendation, it says approval of proposed local law for moratorium on the processing and approval of special permits by the town board in connection with any application for one-family dwellings and accessory structures with a square footage living area greater than 5,999 square feet, subject to the following considerations. The moratorium should be limited to an initial 6-month period. At such time, the town should return to the Suffolk County Planning Commission to advise on its progress. Meaning, we could potentially do another 6-month, which we could do anyway. But
Right.
we would have to go to the Suffolk County Planning Commission for at least their review and their comments. So I think we have the green light to proceed. I know at the next town board meeting, we're going to continue the hearing. I suggest we open it, close it, and make a decision at the
Right.
next town board meeting.
Good, thank you.
All right.
Amber, you have anything for us?
I do not.
Anybody in the Zoom audience have any questions or comments? Julie, you good? I'm gonna take that as a yes.
I am, thank you.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna make a motion, we close the work session and go into executive session to discuss employment history of an employee.
Second,
Move.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.